Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, I understand from Councillor Khan that he'll be regrets this evening. Are there any other regrets?
We also have regrets from Councillor Demoff.
Thank you. All right. Councillor, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Would two of you like to move and second resolving in a committee of the whole? Councillor Lapworth and Councillor Elgar, all in favor. Opposed to any, and that carries. We're now in committee of the whole where our rules are relaxed so that we can hear more extensively from the public on planning matters. And on the agenda tonight we have 3 consent items. These are items that are considered to be routine and unlikely to be of public controversy or dispute. And I'd look for a mover. Councillor Elgar moves the consent items. All those in favor? Opposed if any? And the consent items are carried. Now, we have no confidential consent items, but we have several public hearing items, 2 public hearing items. And the first one is the public meeting report for 2390 Calsa Gate. And this is a step in our planning approval process where we report on input from the public to date, and we seek further input from the public for planning staff to consider and bring back at a later date a recommendation report. So this is a public input intake session for this item. And Rob, are you on deck for this?
Yes, I am.
If everyone will give their attention to our senior planner, Rob Thun, he will summarize for the public this matter, which council has fully read already.
Thank you, Mayor Burton and members of council. This is a statutory public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Willow Bay Rickmar, commonly known as Ballantree Homes, for the development of 123 stacked townhouses and 248 apartment units at 2390 Calsa Gate. The report can be found on page 17 of tonight's agenda, and as you had mentioned, Your Worship, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to obtain further public input related to the application. Staff will return in the future with a comprehensive review of the application as part of the recommendation report. The air photo on the slide identifies the application area and its context with the surrounding area. The surrounding land uses, Bronte Road and residential uses are to the west. Calsa Gate and residential uses are to the east and to the south. And Pine Glen Road and residential is to the north. In section 4.1 of the Livable Oakville Plan, Palermo is identified as one of the town's primary growth areas. The site itself is designated as urban center, and the minimum residential density, and its residential density, is 100 units per site hectare. That is a minimum. The site is zoned R8C and C6A with special provision 753 in the town's old bylaw, so 1984-63, as you can see on the slide. The site is zoned MU3 in bylaw 2014-014, which is the new Town of Oakville in-zone bylaw. The applicant is seeking a site-specific amendment to both of these bylaws to reflect the proposed development. So the 123 stacked townhouses and the 248 apartment units. The slide on the screen now is the development plan. It reflects the 123 stacked townhouse units on the northerly part, so that would reflect in the northerly area in this area where the cursor is. And the southerly portion of the property for the 248 apartment units on the southerly part, access to the site will be from Calsa Gate only. And you have 2 access points being proposed, one at the northerly end and one sort of in the middle off of Calsa Gate. There will not be any access points off of Bronte Road. A public information meeting was held on June 18th of this year. One member of the public did attend to that meeting, and his comment is reflected in the staff report tonight. The slide before you now is the conceptual townhouse elevations and also the apartment, 10-story apartment building elevations. These are conceptual and will be further refined through the technical review process before we come back with a recommendation report. So in conclusion, Your Worship, staff put forward the following recommendation for Council's consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thun. Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Thun before I seek additional public input? All right. Madam Clerk, do we have registered delegations on this?
No, we have none.
Are there any members of the public here with information for council and planning on this file? Thank you. Councillor Elgar? Councillor Elgar moves receipt of the information that we've received from the public and planning. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that is carried. That brings us to the next public hearing item, and this is the public hearing and recommendation report, mapping corrections for zoning bylaw amendments in your agenda tonight, page 39 to 44, item 5. Good evening. We look forward to your summary for the public.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. It's great to be back before you tonight with a very short presentation on an even shorter report. 2 draft bylaw amendments are before council tonight for consideration. These 2 amendments make a sum total of 11 mapping corrections to both North Oakville zoning bylaw 2009-189 and the new Town of Oakville zoning bylaw 2014-14. 1 of those is in North Oakville, 10 of those south of Dundas. The changes are detailed through a series of schedules in the amendments before you. Staff would suggest that these changes are minor and corrective in nature. Passing this amendment resolves some inadvertent issues that were created on these properties through some transcription errors and editorial errors in the passage of the passage of a recent amendment in North Oakville and in passing 2014-14. The current incorrect zoning may result in delays for some of these properties in achieving zoning compliance on the subject lots. And coming to council with this technical amendment is, in staff's opinion, the fastest and easiest way to resolve these problems. The recommendation is to pass the 2 bylaws. This is similar to the recommendation that was presented by staff on 2 previous housekeeping amendments. Should comment be received tonight from members of the public, staff can provide an alternate recommendation to council. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Nethery, thank you. It's always good to see you here before us. Council, do you have questions for Mr. Nethery? Are there members of the public with information on this item for council? Council, I'm at your service here. Councillor Adams. Councillor Adams moves the recommendation. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Nethery. Item 6 on our agenda tonight is the recommendation report for the draft plan of standard condominium for Blue Water residences. And back in the batter's box is Rob Thun, and a hand from Councillor Robinson.
Your Worship, it would be my recommendation that we can not necessarily have the presentation here tonight. I'm satisfied with the process that's been followed.
Thank you,
And
Councillor.
in accordance with that, what I said, I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there members of council who need a summary of the matter that you've already read? I guess that's easy to say no to. It's moved by Councillor Robinson. All those in favor? Is there anybody in the public? No. I don't believe so. I would have heard. But anyway, are there any members of the public with information on this? Didn't think so. We only had the 1 registered delegation, so I had a clue there. So that carries, I believe. All those opposed? Any opposed? Then everyone was for it, no one was opposed, and it carried, Madam Clerk. Number seven. This time we get Trish Collingwood. Welcome back. This is the recommendation report for the zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision for Davis Minardi Home. And I think in the interest of the public, we should enjoy Ms. Collingwood's presentation. So the floor is yours, and we're all ears.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of Council. The purpose of this presentation is to provide a comprehensive review of the applications and a recommendation on the proposed draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment for Davis Minardi Home Corporation. Excuse me. The lands are located on the east side of Nayagawa Boulevard at the east end of North Park Boulevard. The lands have a lot area of approximately 2.9 hectares, and surrounding uses include Davis Minardi Phase 1 to the west, and Shannon's Creek, the Natural Heritage System to the north, agricultural lands to the east and south, which are part of Lower Fourth Pendant, the Mattamy development lands. In February 2005, the Davis Minardi Home Corporation and Dunbridge Development, Inc. Submitted a zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision application for the land on the northeast corner of Nayagawa Boulevard and Dundas Street West, and the smaller parcel on the west side of Nayagawa Boulevard, just up to the top here, Nayagawa Boulevard, known as the Phase 2A lands that were recently approved by Council. The applications were subsequently appealed to the Ontario Municipal Board. With the approval of the North Oakville East Secondary Plan in 2008, the applicant revised the original proposal to reflect the approved secondary plan. These amendments were made in the context of the existing appeals which remain at the OMB. The revised draft plan of subdivision, as seen on the screen, was reduced in size from approximately 68 hectares to 59 hectares and referred to Phase 1, which is this land here, which is existing now. The 2A lands the 2B lands, which are the lands subject to this application, at the eastern terminus of North Park Drive, were removed from the draft plan and are before you tonight. A zoning bylaw amendment and revised draft plan of subdivision was submitted in April 2012 by Davis Minardi Home Corp. To permit 40 single detached dwellings on 2.1 hectares of land. The subdivision also includes a pedestrian walkway and public roads. A zoning bylaw amendment application was submitted to implement the proposed plan of subdivision and rezone the lands from existing development to general urban area and suburban. The Shannon's Creek block was delineated through the EIR FSS for Phase 1. The plan was revised in April of this year to address the coordination with the development lands to the east, the Mattamy lands, and the plan of subdivision we've brought forward tonight permits 38 single detached dwellings and includes the extension of North Park Drive, which will ultimately connect to 6th Line. The lands are designated neighborhood area in the North Oakville East Secondary Plan, and this designation is intended for the development of residential neighborhoods with central activity nodes being no more than a 5-minute walk from most residences. The transportation plan in the North Oakville Secondary Plan identifies an east-west connector transit corridor with community transit service provided along Street B, which is North Park Drive, connecting Nayagawa to 6th Line. The neighborhood will provide residents with transit services, bike routes, and walkways, all within close proximity to services, future schools, and parks. The master plan identifies the lands as general urban area and suburban area. The general urban area is intended to accommodate a range of low to medium density residential development with a minimum medium residential density of 25 to 75 units per site hectare, while the suburban is intended for a lower residential development. The proposed density comes approximately at 22 units per hectare. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment employs the in effect general urban and suburban zones found in the North Oakville zoning bylaw, with some minor modifications intended to provide some flexibility. The zoning implements the plan of subdivision, and staff have evaluated the proposed development in the context of the North Oakville East Secondary Plan and the master plan, and support the zoning bylaw amendment that permits slight alterations to the general urban and suburban zones with regards to regulating front and rear yard setbacks, private garage projections, and porch enclosures. The proposed zoning bylaw, 2014-101 for the Davis Minardi 2B lands, is included on tonight's agenda. A few of the more significant features or details of this application include the proposed draft plan of subdivision is consistent with the overall development direction of the lands and conforms to policies within the North Oakville East Secondary Plan. Coordination between the adjacent landowners to the east has been agreed upon by all parties for the phasing of infrastructure, including roads, servicing, and stormwater requirements. This development adds links to the developing transportation network, including the extension of North Park Drive to further east, and an east-west walkway through the development will contribute to transit delivery and efficiencies, as well as the pedestrian and cycling connectivity. Servicing allocation was approved as part of the 2008-2009 allocation program, and the applicant currently has an outstanding appeal to a committee of adjustment, to the Ontario Municipal Board, and will be working with the town for that withdrawal. Recommendation tonight is in accordance with Section 3417 of the Planning Act. No further notice is determined to be necessary. That the zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision applications submitted by the applicant be approved. That bylaw 2014-101 be passed. And that subject to the withdrawal of related appeals from the Ontario Municipal Board, the Director of Planning Services be authorized to grant draft plan approval to the draft plan of subdivision submitted by Davis Minardi Home Corporation, subject to the conditions included in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. Now, Council, do you have questions? Are there members of the public with information for Council on this item? Councillor Knoll.
Your Worship, in the absence of delegations, my colleague and I are satisfied with the report, and I would like to clearly and articulately move the recommendation required to enact this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor. You're articulate as always. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that is carried in a swift and articulate manner. Thank you, Trish. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to introduce to you Jeff Abma, a new planner in our department. Jeff is here to give us a run through item number 7 on your agenda. I believe, if I have, no, it's number 8. I'm sorry, I lost my page. And Dana, was there anything you wanted to say?
Well, I was going to say new and improved because Jeff, as you know, was a urban designer with us some time ago, had what we'll call a setback, secondment to Edmonton, and is now back in Oakville full-time.
That was so articulately done and elegantly witty, including a setback to Edmonton. I like that. Welcome back to the good part.
Well, thank you.
We're all ears. For the public, this is a draft plan of condominium approval for Ballantree at 216 Oak Park, and this is a summary for the public's benefit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of Council. The purpose of this report is to provide Council with a recommendation on 3 draft plans of condominium submitted by Ballantree Oak Park Incorporated to create 3 standard condominiums related to 1 mixed-use building, 12 residential buildings containing a total of 18 commercial units and 320 residential units. The intent of the draft plans of condominium are to establish condominium tenure for the development to allow the transfer of individual units to future owners. The sites are located on the south side of Oak Park Boulevard between Sawgrass Drive and Taunton Road in the Uptown core, east of Trafalgar Road. The site encompasses a number of municipal addresses, which I will not read, but they're listed on the slide above. Phase 1 is located just off of North Oak Park Boulevard, up at the top. Phase 2 is located on Sawgrass Drive, Georgian Drive, and Taunton Road in the middle. And Phase 3 is located on Georgian Drive, Littlewood Drive, Gatwick Drive, and Roxton Road. These 3 down here. The applicant is requesting approval of 3 separate draft plans of condominium. Each of the phases shown here will become its own standard condominium. And the first phase is for a 4-story mixed-use building up here with commercial units at grade, 3 stories of residential units above, and an underground parking garage. The primary vehicular access will be from Sawgrass Drive over here to the rear of the building, and pedestrians will be able to access it right from Oak Park Boulevard. The second condominium is for six three-story buildings containing 131 residential units, and that's shown down here. Each unit will be associated with its own individual parking garage. Some units will have direct access to the garage internally from the unit, while others may not. And the garages for some units will be located in the same building as the unit, or it may be located in another building on site or in the group of parking garages located in the middle of the site. The third condominium, Phase 3, is also for six three-story buildings containing 81 residential units. Similar to Phase 2, each unit will be associated with its own individual parking garage. What makes Phase 3 slightly unique is that it is divided geographically into three parts, separated by Littlewood Drive and Gatwick Drive, which are public roads and hence not part of the proposed condominium, as you can see up on the right. The development has been the subject of a number of planning applications, including a draft plan of subdivision approved by the region on July 13, 1995, a zoning bylaw amendment approved by council on January 16, 2012, and a site plan application which was granted final approval just back in May 21 of this year. The developer has received foundation permits for the mixed-use building in Phase 1 and is in the process of obtaining building permits for all the remaining phases. The subject site is designated as Main Street 2 for what is Phase 1 and high-density residential for Phases 2 and 3 in the livable Oakville official plan. The development conforms to these official plan designations. As I'm sure you're aware, the new zoning bylaw 2014-14 is currently under appeal with the OMB, and while these appeals remain active, developments will need to comply with both the new zoning bylaw and the old zoning bylaw. Under the new zoning bylaw, the site for Phase 1 is zoned MU2 Special Provision 40, which is a mixed-use zone. Phases 2 and 3 are zoned RH Special Provision 39, which is a high-density residential zone. Under the old zoning bylaw, 1984-63, the site for Phase 1 is zoned MU2 Special Provision 861 and 837, again a mixed-use zone, and Phases 2 and 3 are zoned R8 Special Provision 861 and 837, again a high-density residential zone, and the development complies with both of these zoning bylaws. In conclusion, the proposed draft plans of condominium will legally create the individual units to allow for the transfer of the ownership to the purchasers. This site was the subject of a detailed site plan process, and all parkland dedication and other financial requirements with the town have been addressed through the site plan process and will be confirmed prior to registration. A full circulation of these condominium applications has been undertaken, and there are no outstanding financial, legal, or planning issues to be resolved. Public participation for this development occurred through the plan of subdivision, zoning bylaw amendment, and site plan processes. And the applicant is in the process of obtaining building permits, which will be in accordance with the approved site plan. Staff put forth the following recommendation for council's decision, as shown above, that the Director of Planning Services be authorized to grant draft plan approval to the draft plans of condominium submitted by Ballantree Oak Park Incorporated, prepared by KRC MAR Surveyors Limited, dated November 16, 2013, and June 25, 2013, subject to the conditions included in Appendix A. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adma. Councilor, do we have questions? Are there members of, Councilor Knoll.
Thank you. What I'm going to ask has no bearing on this particular application. I'm not accusing them in advance of doing something, but we've had circumstances with other condominiums in North Ward 5 where after the condominium agreements are signed and everybody moves in, there's a misunderstanding or there's a lack of understanding about issues like, for example, snow removal. Last year we had several Mount Kilimanjaro-sized snow piles that were literally pushed out of the condominiums and left in the road for us to deal with. And I'm wondering what kind of wording, what kind of proactive position can we take in this process? It may be too late here to make sure that not only do the developers understand the ramifications of the Condominium Act and the condominium agreement, but that the residents will understand, because it was a major bone of contention last year between the residents their property management company and my answering machine at very weird hours of the day.
Well, thank you for that question. Planning? Who wants to field that? Okay, Jeff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding of snow removal is that it's conditions for snow removal are contained in the site plan agreement, which I believe was issued for this project.
I understand that part, but
Okay.
but again, it's all great in theory, and the documents look great and the wording's all wonderful. How do we go forward and make sure first of all, how do we make sure that the residents are aware? I mean, in these days of inexpensive, quick paralegal services, people don't get really good advice on their home ownership agreements to begin with, and they gloss over some of those conditions. So how can we as a municipality, without bearing the cost of having to, which we did in several cases this year in Ward 5, and I'm sure in other wards as well, how do we make it clear to the residents and the boards that this is the responsibility going like well after the condominium agreement is signed, sealed, and delivered? Is there something we can do, or are we just sort of at the mercy of the legislation?
Through your worship to Councillor Knoll, I can speak to that to the extent that the conditions that are required under the legal section do require the registration, and they do require the declaration setting out all of the various requirements for the condominium corporation, which would include all of those things associated with the common elements and snow removal, garbage removal, all of the things that the condominium corporation is responsible for. That declaration, however, being registered on title, sits with the owner to verify and confirm on purchase. The difficulty may be if the unit is rented, it's not necessarily transferred, but it is aware from the ownership perspective that it's registered on title. But again, it comes back to buyer beware, and the information is conveyed to the extent possible from the municipality. And I'm not sure if Ms. Chandra wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, I guess, Your Worship, I do understand all of that, and I mean, like almost like every agreement, site plan agreement, every other agreement we sign with developers and builders. The reality hits when the condo associations, for example, realize that they've just overblown their budget by 19 times because there's been, there was more than a quarter centimeter of snow, which has happened, for example, last year. And so it inconveniences everybody. It causes a safety issue, and then Public Works has to come with back-end loaders and clear it out. So it's great to say it's in the legal agreement, but is there something we can do proactively? So, for example, we require the developers to put signs up in sales pavilions about you may never get a school in your neighborhood, or for a long period of time. I know that Councillor Elgar and I have been on that for years and years. How do we do something similar about snow removal, to make sure that residents are aware that this might be something they want to take into account when they're budgeting their condo fees? Is there some sort of education piece, or?
Councillor, on this particular item in particular, or on this problem in general?
Yes, I apologize in advance to our friends from Ballantrae. I don't mean to center them out. This happens to be just, I'm thinking snow already. And this is in the neighborhood where we have the problem on the other side of the development. So perhaps maybe the best way to deal with this, Your Worship, is simply to ask the staff to consider that, or maybe I'll ask for a report at the next council meeting and ask if there's other methods that we can deal with it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Grant?
Just to chime in with that, I know that most of the councillors on this side of the table have been fighting for this as new homes get built. And I was going to ask, would it then be best for us? We keep, again, coming back to what can we do about getting the sales offices to do something. I think it's been about a good 6 years now that the sales offices still haven't really done much. In fact, I had a conversation with somebody the other day about how they can't build on a swale because it's there. And they said, well, I wasn't aware of it, and then discovered it was on title. So they just never took the time because the person who sold them the home never mentioned that. So I'm just wondering if perhaps through some sort of request for report, perhaps on the next cycle of council, we could probably try and get something published by the town as sort of a welcome to Oakville. By the way, here's certain ways that you might not be understanding that you're going to get costs thrown at you.
Councillors, it sounds like a great idea. In the interim, can I have a motion on this to pass it or reject it?
Yes, Your Worship, I'll give you a motion to pass the recommendations with apologies to Ballantrae for making it sound like I'm holding them out for ransom or something.
Thank you, Councillor. Any others? All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is carried. All right, now, if we turn our attention to the agenda, item number 9, we have a notice of intention to demolish at 2347 Royal Windsor Drive, and this is a matter we've already considered. This recommendation is that the salvage of lake stone from the demolition of the house be no longer necessary for the heritage easement agreement required by Council's May 12, 2014 resolution. Is there any member of Council with questions or concerns about this? Councilor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If no one from council or from the public has any questions, I'm happy to move this. We're caught between a stone and a hard place. When it came before Heritage earlier this year, we thought that there would be enough to construct a commemorative cairn. There isn't. There is still the prerequisite to have a plaque in place, so I'm happy to move that.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't believe there are, but I'll ask, are there any members of the public here with information on this item? Thank you for your motion, Councillor. I was going to pass the chair and make it myself if necessary, because this is pretty small potatoes. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is carried. Now that brings us to the notice of item 10, the notice of intention to designate 2508 Lakeshore Road West, which is otherwise fondly known as Metro Marine. Councillor Johnston.
I'm prepared to move it.
Thank you. I don't believe there is no one here in the public that I believe to be here on this matter. You can raise your hand if I'm wrong, and I'm not. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? And it's carried. Item number 11 is an addendum that was distributed for you. And this is the report from the Commissioner of Community Services on Bronte Marina building. And Mr. Lalonde is here if you have questions, but Councillor Robinson has a hand. Councillor Robinson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've talked with Mr. Lalonde about this before. The people living at 100 Bronte Road have decks at the back of their units that face onto the poor-looking condition that the marine building is in right now. And I've talked to Mr. Lalonde about trying to find some money to fix it up and make it look a little bit better. And I really didn't get too far. Now I see he's recommending $60,000 in here to do something, make it safer and it doesn't leak with water and all that, I guess. But I'm also concerned, councillors, about the appearance and the condition of the outside of the building. It looks really, really bad for those people that have to face and sit and look at it all the time. And I would very much like to know if Mr. Lalonde, with that $60,000, is able to do anything along the lines that I've just talked about.
Mr. Lalonde?
Hello. The $60,000 is aimed at remediation of the building only. So there were significant roof leaks when we had our storm back about 4 weeks ago. There was leaking through the envelope of the building, and the $60,000 price tag is really to replace the shingles on the roof, the upper roof and the lower roof, and to do some small remediation to the windows and the exterior of the building to make it waterproof. It is not to address any of the views that people would enjoy of that building. It ends there. And I think that's the answer to that question.
Thank you. It's a good answer. Councillor, a new roof and some window work will improve the appearance marginally. Perhaps we can take this in a couple of steps and be happy with this step and look for another step on another occasion.
I'd be prepared to sort of move the motion that's there if council would agree to me including a little bit more, suggesting or asking that staff proceed with this and at the same time review some of the concerns that the residents of 100 Bronte Road have expressed from time to time and for which nothing has happened.
Councillor, thank you for your motion to move the staff recommendation and as an additional step, request staff to consult with the residents about their concerns.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Can I
Councillor
address
Burke.
that? I find that quite unique because
You know, over the years, I've looked in the Planning Act, and I can't find anything in there where one resident has a right to a view. And or another application has some obligation to present some view, and I don't know if this goes to site plan issue or not, that they can continually complain about the view. We have property standards and stuff with safety, but where in fact a group of residents can say, I don't like the look of that, and voila, money can be spent to improve that view. It's a new program we're going down. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it could be very precedent setting and very, very expensive going forward. So I'm interested to see it, how the, it's not going to be obviously my problem, but it may be a future problem from some of you sitting around here, because there's many other people over the years that their big objection to any development is they don't like the look of it, or it's going to affect their view. And I'm just saying, you really could be opening up the kimono to an issue that you really don't want to go any farther.
Thank you, Councillor. Shall we divide the motion into two pieces?
You.
All right. I'll call the motion. Councillor Adams.
Given the discussion, I wonder if we could ask our staff their comment on the item 2, the second part of the recommendation, that the additional repairs required be brought back to us at a future date. I would have expected that to include a greater report with respect to the details of what repairs would be undertaken, and I would see no reason why, as part of that, we wouldn't be contemplating a facade change or improvement to the exterior of the building as part of that anyway. So I don't see there being any real problem with asking the neighbors, what do you think? Am I more or less in the right ballpark with respect to how that would proceed?
We would certainly expect to do that. The $60,000 contemplated for this round is strictly for repairs to make the building stop leaking. The second part that you're referring to, we contemplate that that would be to bring it to a state of good repair. We'd like to do some more study on the building. We would be happy to propose changes to the exterior of the building. And we thought with the recent heritage designation that we would be bringing it in for heritage permits and all of that sort of activity.
Thank you very much. So I see there being no problem with proceeding with the request of the councillor to ask the neighbors their opinion of what the place looks like and how it might look in the future. That doesn't mean that we're going to immediately push the item forward in our capital plan to do it tomorrow. The emergency work that needs to be done is emergency work that needs to be done. The bigger project, the revitalization, I'll call it, of the property, that's another matter, and it's a bigger deal.
Thank you, Councillor. This council has had as one of its trademarks a desire to always consult with the public. I don't believe in this case staff are indicating any difficulty with consulting with the public, and that is all that Councillor Robinson is asking we add. So how much kimono gets involved later, we have yet to discover. Councillor Robinson?
I would just like to point out that for the most part, Councillor Burt is correct, but this is a little bit different. This is not something that's being built that they don't like the look of. This used to look fine at one time. It's a town building, used to look good, now it looks terrible. And that's all I'm asking for we talk about.
Right, so we're all clear now. We're doing the emergency work. We'll have a detailed report later on what it takes to get into a state of good repair, which is a very important thing to this council, and we will consult with the public in the vicinity, which is another important value of this council. Is there still an interest in dividing the question into pieces? I'll put the entire question then. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And it carries. All right, Council, we now have the confidential discussion item, the Ontario Municipal Board Appeal of Minor Variance Decision. I believe you've been able to make a determination on this without the need for further in-camera session, and I wonder if there's a motion available. Councillor Johnston?
I'll move it.
Councillor Johnston moves the confidential recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that carries. I can now report, I believe, that we have voted no, that's not it. I'm looking for C1. Because now that we voted, it's possible to report the public decision, right? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. So, Council has assented to a recommendation that the town solicitor be instructed as set out in the August 20th, 2014 confidential legal report. Thank you, Councillor. All right, Council, we now turn to item number 12, the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee minutes. Councillor Johnston.
I'd like to separate A from the rest of the other two items.
And would you be moving the rest of it?
Sure.
Thank you. Are there any other separations? May I call the vote on the balance? All in favor? And the balance are adopted. Councillor, you have the floor on item A.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like Council to defeat this motion that came out of Heritage. The applicant has met with councillors and staff to ask how he should proceed to rejuvenate the property and create a vibrant business. And that's what he's been going about and doing it. And staff also, Heritage planning staff also recommended the approval of the heritage permit that was made. So I would like to defeat this recommendation from the committee and replace it with one of approval. Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion from Heritage is on the floor with a recommendation from Councillor Johnston to defeat it. Councillor Giddings?
I would appreciate hearing from staff on this in terms of the background.
Staff? Mr. Hanna, is this your?
Thank you, Worship. I can certainly attempt through yourself to Councillor Giddings. Yes, this was a matter that was considered to be a delegated permit initially to staff, and staff were discussing as early as May of this year with the applicant. It was considered delegation because it was related to a wall or fencing of the property. When it was considered internally, the director, as per our delegation bylaw, thought it was a matter of significant enough to go to Heritage Oakville for consideration and then on to council. And so it was considered by Heritage Oakville at the last meeting. I was not there myself. I was on holidays, but that is the recommendation before you from the committee, is to deny.
Right. So just to assist the councillor, I believe the important part here is to amplify the fact that the Heritage Committee was in disagreement with the staff recommendation, and the councillor is anxious, or is asking council to disagree with the committee and agree with the staff. Is that right, councillor? Yes. Correct. Councillor Giddings, do you have more?
Yes, thank you. This came to Heritage Committee, and the concern was over the overall look, and they felt that this should have come and worked through staff in terms of having a structure more fitting with the heritage nature of the area. And so Heritage was fairly adamant and unanimous that it be refused, and that staff would work further with the proponent, not to tear the structure down necessarily, but to work on it and make it more fitting with the heritage nature.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers? The motion before us is the Heritage Committee recommendation. A vote in favor would uphold the committee. A negative vote would defeat it and make room for the councillors from Brony to put a different motion. All those in favor of the motion? Oh, Madam Director.
Sorry, Your Worship, just to interject. I do understand there is a delegation on this matter that's registered.
The delegation withdrew, but thank you. Are there other members of the public with information for the committee on this? I see none. So the motion before council is to approve, to endorse or approve Heritage Oakville's recommendation. A vote yes is to uphold the committee. A vote no is to defeat and make room for a new motion. All those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? The motion fails. Councillor Johnston, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'd like to move the recommendation that the heritage permit HP 029//14-42.20 for the erection of a cement fence stroke wall at 49 Bronte Road, as attached in Appendix B to the report dated August the 5th, 2014 from Planning Services, be approved, and that 2, this heritage permit expire 2 years from the date of final approval by Council.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Just for information, the structure has been constructed and it is in place. And so approving the permit is for a structure that is already in place. I cannot support the councillor on this. I still think that it should look somewhat better in terms of the heritage nature of the building and the surrounding area, so I'm not able to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Any other speakers? Then all those in favor? Oh, Councillor Lapworth.
I'd just like to ask the mover of the new motion if the brick wall or the cement wall is going to remain in its standard colour, or is it going to be painted or coloured in any way?
I am not privy to that information.
All right. Councillor Bird.
On page 17, 18, and 19 that we're suggesting it somehow has some heritage, we want to keep it and it has some heritage significance? I just can't understand why that would be critical to keeping. Maybe it is in Bronte, but this is the new, and this is the one that's consistent with this? That's what the standard is? Okay, I'm having difficulty seeing the heritage nature currently or going forward. I'd hate to see it replicated.
Thank you, Councillor. Any others? All those in favor? Opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you, Council. It's time for a motion to rise and report. Councillor Robinson, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. I rise and report that Council has met in Committee of the Whole and made decisions on agenda items 1 to 12, and confidential, which includes confidential discussion item C1. Did I miss anything out? I don't think so. I need a mover and seconder for this report, please. Councillor Grant and Councillor Knoll. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that report is adopted. Is there new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature? Then perhaps we could have a mover and seconder for the bylaws. Councillor Johnston, Councillor Knoll. This is authority for bylaws 2014-88 and 99, and 101, 104, 105, 106, 108, 109, and 114, the confirmatory bylaw. The previously listed bylaws being the bylaws giving effect to the decisions of this evening. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? The bylaws are adopted. Council, that concludes our agenda. I want to thank you for your time and attention. It's been great working with you, and we are adjourned.